Dressed in the Dark is a show about what goes on in our heads when no one is looking, when we're all alone. Why do we talk to ourselves the way we do? Does our inner dialogue influence our real world? Does it change our behavior? If it does, how? And if it doesn't, how can it not? If we change how we speak to ourselves, will it influence our actions? Will it reshape our reality? Will it make people treat us different? I don't know. I'm going to ask around though and see what I can find out. Starting Wednesday, October 13th, Dressed in the Dark, the show that asks who taught you how to talk to yourself, will be available on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, just about wherever you get podcasts. Please join us as we sit at the crossroads of thoughts and reality and talk about how we talk to ourselves.
Nice to be in orbit. I've already hit the pad.
One time, I mistook a shower. Well, that's not entirely true. The shower went pretty good. It was the drying off where I failed. I just failed. You whip back the curtain and you snatch the towel off the sink there. And, got going on the feet and the legs, no problem. It's all pretty standard. Made my way up to the nether regions. I like to thoroughly dry my nether regions. I'll say that again because a car drove by. I insist upon thoroughly dried nether regions. It's just one of the cornerstones of civilization. As soon as I was satisfied, I took the towel and I just wiped my face with it. Just really hard, it was satisfying. It didn't take long before I noticed what I'd done. I'd frozen when I realized that I'd dried my face with the ass part of the towel. I looked around to my left, my right, made sure I was alone. It's not something you want to do in front of somebody. And I said in my head, did I just do that? Did I just dry ass towel? I knew I had. I wasn't proud of it. But I just lied to myself for the rest of the day. Nope. No, I didn't do that. I wasn't. I saw it on TV or something. I don't know why I had to lie to myself. I don't know why I still think about it all these years later. I just like thinking about why I think about things. It's just kind of what I think about.
Nice to be in orbit. I've already hit the pad.
If you're anything like me, you've had a horrible ingrown toenail problem your whole life. Maybe not your whole life. Since when you were allowed to, your whole career of clipping your own nails. So when's that? When you trusted with nail clippers? 5th grade? 4th grade? That's aside from the point. Point is, I have an ingrown toenail. and they hurt. They don't start to hurt all at once. I mean, after you dig it out, you have a period of time before it starts to hurt again. That's the greatest time of your life. By your life, I mean mine. So anyway, it grows back, it starts to hurt again. And at the first tinge of pain, you can just grab it, yank it out, get about in your day. I've never done that my entire life. I always just make a mental note of it and go about my day until a month or so later, I'm nearly crippled and in intense pain, and my toes like swollen, not twice the size, but definitely like a third bigger. What follows is a very unsanitary Civil War surgery reenactment where the ingrown toenail serves as a substitute for a musket bullet. Then I take it out and it hurts for a few more days till it drains, and then everything's great again until that first little pang of pain appears, and I haven't learned anything. I just make a mental note of it, go about my day, knowing that in a month or so I'm going to be in debilitating pain and have to risk getting tetanus shot and using nail clippers in an unholy manner just so I can walk. I don't know why I do that.
Nice to be in orbit.
Have you ever thought to yourself, I might be a wizard? Let me explain. Wizards are people who use magic. Sometimes we do something that seems like magic. We might think that we're a wizard. Doing so usually slows down after the age of 9, but it doesn't mean it can't happen after that. One day, well actually it was a night, I was sleeping and trying to. It wasn't working too well. Usually when I can't sleep, I just worry about how tired I'm going to be the next day and toss and turn and think about that, and it sucks. And then I wake up and I'm tired. But on this night when I couldn't sleep, I thought, maybe I'll just feel okay in the morning. Maybe my body knows how much sleep it needs, and it's going to get that much, and it's none of my business. And I'll just enjoy the tossing and the turning. And I woke up in the morning, and I felt like a wizard. That's how good I felt. I don't know if that'll work for you, but you might want to try it.
Nice to be in orbit. I've already hit the pad.
Have you ever held a pencil correctly? I doubt that you have. There's not anything wrong with you. Nobody does. Just about everybody holds a pencil too tight. Go ahead. Try it. I'm willing to guess that you are not concerned with the biomechanics of pencil holding and more focused on the words you're saying to yourself inside of your head. How hard you grip the pen is in direct relation to what you think, not how hard you have to grip the pen to perform the act of writing. Don't you think there's anything weird about that? So have you tried it? Have you tried holding a pencil, paying attention to yourself? That's not the only place it happens. Check yourself next time you're behind the wheel of a car. And I'm sure you'll find that not only how hard you grip the steering wheel, but that the way you're sitting and all the tension in your body and the posture is related more to you reacting to traffic than it is to properly pushing pedals and turning wheels and fixing the radio. Why does this happen? Again, I don't know. I didn't start this podcast to tell you things. Sometimes when I'm walking around, I walk through. Sometimes I walk through spider webs that I can't. Sometimes I walk through spider webs that I can't see. And I feel bad because I ruined their whole day's work. I'd like to tell you something. I was doing some research for the first episode, and I learned that when you think inside your head, the muscles in your throat and tongue that correspond to saying those words out loud move ever so slightly. And if you can get quiet enough and relax, you can feel this happening. Crazy, isn't it? If you've ever tried to learn an instrument or learn to solder or even type, I think you'll know what I mean. The amount of force we use is often in excess of the amount of force necessary. We wonder why everything goes south so often.
Nice to be in orbit. I've already hit the pad.
I was listening to a podcast I like called The Secret History of the Future. This episode, they were talking about forks and how for a few hundred years, people didn't want to eat with forks because other people would make fun of them. So the entire evolution of eating was held up for way too long because of jerks who were afraid of new things. This doesn't just happen with forks. It makes me want to spend some time thinking about how I'm doing that to myself. Before I go looking for metaphorical forks and see how I'm getting in the way of my self-evolution, I just want to remind you the first proper episode of Dressed in the Dark comes out October 13th. It's official. We're a real podcast now. We have a theme song.
Nice to be in orbit. I'm already at the pad.
It's raining. I love it when it rains. It gets quiet on the inside of my head. It's easier to meditate. Again, I know I'm not alone, but I don't know why this happens. Starting this podcast made me think of when I decided to become a writer. I was 26 maybe, just recently broken up with a girlfriend. Decided I was going to be the next great short story writer. So, long story short, I didn't end up writing any stories. But I did almost finish the story. I signed up for a correspondence class with a published author. I bought 3 laptops, my weight in how to write books, and a subscription to Writer's Digest. It made me feel great, but I didn't write anything. I'm back. Sorry about that. I forgot how to talk for a little bit. It's not raining anymore, but it's just lightning. That's even weirder. So it felt great to jack my credit cards up and buy a whole bunch of new stuff and trick myself into thinking I was learning something when I was just buying new things. The excitement I felt was definitely not sexual in nature. There was no arousal. But it had that same feeling of weird magnet energy hovering a couple of inches above your skin. Everything was tingly and more sensitive. But not in a weird way. Just in a, you're about to write the greatest short story in the world as soon as you get done reformatting your hard drive for the 15th time because you weren't happy with the text size settings kind of way. Next time, I almost fell for this trick again when I started this podcast. I'll tell you about it.
Nice to be in orbit. I'm already at the pad.
So, right before I started this podcast, I had gone through a breakthrough and had to move. And instead of wanting to become a writer again, I decided to try my hand at podcasting. Before I found a platform or picked a subject or a topic or a style, I went shopping for microphones. And it was as exciting as shopping for writing bullshit that I never used was. I didn't get the microphone, but it's coming in a couple days. But I think I learned some stuff from the laptop incident. Before I got the microphone ordered, I had already done 10 little episodes and pretty well into the research for the first real episode, which is coming October 13th. Progress always comes in centimeters. At the beginning of this episode, I mistakenly said break through instead of break up. I just wanted to clarify. Although, when I think about it, it might have been the same thing.
Nice to be in orbit.
I looked into fetishes, where the word comes from, and what it is, and it's a little bit different than just the straight up sexual term that we're all familiar with. So we're not even going to go into that. Sexually, a fetish is getting aroused at something other than a naked person, as far as I understand it. It's a piece of clothing or a scenario or something that has an extra charge to it. And from that, we get a clue as to what non-sexual fetishes are. I did some research, some real research, because I got a new microphone. I don't know if you can tell the difference, but I can. The word fetish comes from a few old words. The French fetiche, which comes from a Portuguese feitiço, and then that goes to the Latin factitious. They kind of mean fake or artificial or to make. So it's to give something power. Anthropologists came up with the term when they were trying to figure out how to explain what was going on in Africa. Their medicine men and women and their whole religious viewpoint kind of threw the white guys into a tizzy, and they would call the tools of these indigenous peoples, religious workers, fetishes, because they would be objects that they claimed would give them magic powers. Then it became kind of something to make fun of. There's a bunch of anthropologists and historians who just kind of write a whole bunch of just jerky things that have nothing to do with trying to understand the culture and just making it so that the European culture seems better than the African one. At least that's what I took from this. Now, here's my favorite part. When I was looking this stuff up, I found that in 1927, Sigmund Freud wrote an essay called Fetishism. And there's a great quote in there. It's not great because it's insightful or useful. It's great because he's cocaine personified. And when I read this quote, I thought that's exactly what someone who does too much cocaine would say. He says, "The fetish is a substitute for the penis, for a particular and quite special penis that had been extremely important in early childhood, but had later been lost." I don't know what that means. And I don't know. It's completely presented lack of context. So we see the history of the fetish is an inanimate object that's imbued with special meaning or power and changes a person's behavior. At least that's what I took from all that. So in that sense, both the laptop and the new microphone I bought are fetish objects because they made me feel like I was able to do things I had previously felt I couldn't do. In the case of the laptop, I didn't end up learning how to write stories. I just took the energy, the excitement generated by the idea of writing stories that was fueled by the new computer stuff, and I just kept buying new stuff with it. But this time I think I learned a little bit of a lesson. This is the 11th episode of the podcast. And I did 10 of them before I even got the microphone, and about 5 of them before I ordered it. So that time I channeled the excitement of getting something new into actually doing something. Slight improvement to be gained by paying attention to how you think. Sorry to disappoint you if you're looking for something sexier. Before we go though, if you're still confused or think this idea is bullshit, think back to when you were a kid. Every little kid had a special toy. I don't mean Linus and his blanket, but that's a great example. But we all had something that made us feel great. It's not that goes away when you get older. You just, because of peer pressure, start to feel foolish, and you let it fall by the wayside. But maybe we shouldn't. Maybe it's just that our concept of magic is overcomplicated.
Nice to be in orbit. Nice to be in orbit.
I didn't think I'd ever have a theme song for this podcast. The original intention when I started this show was to not really have any intentions, just to see where it would go. After I did a few, it seemed like it would be fun to intersperse the shorter episodes with longer ones where I actually do research, talk about things. The first thing I wanted to talk about was how Western psychology views the inner voice and what they had to say about the phenomenon. I'm still looking into it. To be honest, I haven't found anything too exciting yet. When it comes to dealing with thoughts, they do better at it in the East. Things like Zen and Buddhism, they might not be able to explain where the inner voice comes from or why it's there, but they spend a lot of time figuring out what to do with it, how to make it work for you. Today I want to talk about Zen. Zen's one of my favorite things ever. I've been into it since I was a kid. Geez, almost 30 years now. I still don't really get it, but that's kind of the point. You don't really get Zen. You just kind of let it happen. A little history. Zen came out of India, made its way to China. It was brought there by somebody called the Bodhidharma, who was the first Buddha. After it got to China, it went to Vietnam and Korea, and eventually ended up in Japan around the 6th century. That's where it kind of really shined. The Japanese loved Zen. They took to it like a duck to water. In the 50s or so, late 40s, Suzuki wrote some books. They were the first books in English about Zen. From there, the Beatniks took it, Alan Watts got a hold of it, Aldous Huxley, a couple other writers. It was big with the hippies. And from the hippies, it went to the 80s ninja craze and Mr. Miyagi. And now Zen is a buzzword that they use to sell you coloring books when you're too old to color. The word Zen comes from a Chinese word, which I don't know how to pronounce, but it means meditation. That's it. Nothing too fancy there. What I like about Zen is the point is to kind of get beyond language and social conditioning and culture and become who you really are. I think that's what they mean by becoming enlightened. It's not an easy process, and it's different for everybody. So that's why there's no real set way to go about practicing Zen. Meditation is the most popular activity. There's also a rich body of stories. These stories are often goofy. Sometimes they're perplexing on purpose. Sometimes they're perplexing because we're unfamiliar with the viewpoint that's being presented. I love these stories. I love reading them. I love telling them. I love thinking about them. And now I love podcasting them. One of the things that Zen masters seem to hold of highest importance is the ability to be honest with yourself. You have to be able to eat your own bullshit and see when your head's up your ass. They're not big on punishing themselves. The point's to make you better. You can't get better if you give yourself a hard time, and you can't get better if you don't acknowledge that there's something wrong. Seems pretty simple. Seems is the key word there. One time there was this Zen master. He was asked to give a speech to a group of really important government types. Rich people, powerful people, those sorts of people. He practiced the speech for a long time, months, if not over a year, and he felt he had perfected it to the best of his abilities. He had every breath controlled. He knew where every pause went. He knew how he should feel, the tone of his voice, how loud he should be. He had it all down. When the time came to give the speech, he noticed it was different than how he had practiced it. It still went over well, and by all counts it was a great speech. But because he was unable to perform it the way he practiced it, he stopped calling himself a Zen master and went to meditate for 7 years until he worked it out. That's a pretty rare and beautiful devotion to self-mastery, if I've ever seen one. I also like Zen because there's this attitude that runs through it that's very anti-authoritarian. It's not rebellious to be rebellious. It just doesn't cotton to things that don't make sense. It has no use for heavy ritual and drama. There's not a lot of emphasis placed on developing psychic powers, for example, like we find in India. The point's just to learn to be where you are, who you are, when you are, as much as possible. Not to talk about how great certain people are, or to strive to reach a certain rank. A Zen master was laying in his bed dying once, and he called for his favorite student, the one who was going to succeed him as master. When the student arrived, he found the teacher laying in bed. The teacher proceeded to tell him that he had been chosen to take his place after he passed, and he planned on passing the next day. The student thanked him and assured him he would do the best job he could. The dying teacher understood this. It's what he expected to hear. And then he told the student that he had a special book that had been passed down from master to master for generations. Each added something to it before giving it to the new master, and he wanted the student to take it. The student became a little angry, and he said, "You taught us that books don't mean anything, and the important thing is to practice meditation and not rely on rituals and rigmarole." The teacher laughed and he said, yeah, I know, but it's just a little thing that we've been doing, and I want you to have this book. Please take it. The student refused, and the teacher asked once again. This time the student took the book, and he threw it into the fireplace. And the teacher says, "What are you doing?" And the student said, "What are you saying to me?" Those are two of my favorite stories about Zen. There's a whole bunch more, but I don't want to tell them to you all at once. If you're interested in them, check out a book called Zen Flesh, Zen Bones. I do have one more Zen story, though. Since it's almost Halloween, I found the only Zen ghost story that I think exists. It's about beans and ghosts. Hey. Alright, still having fun telling stories, so I'm going to keep doing it. I think it was mentioned earlier, this is a ghost story. It's a Zen ghost story. So it's not very scary, it's more illuminating. So it starts out about this guy, his wife passes away, and as she's passing away, she makes him promise never to be with anyone else again, because she's selfish. He of course agrees, because what's the point of disagreeing? You just let her die and do what you want anyway. There's not much you can do about it. For a while, he keeps his promise. He's not really interested in other women or pursuing a relationship with anything. He's just content to be by himself. And then one day it happens. He falls in love. They want to get married. So he goes and he buys an engagement ring. And later that night, he's haunted by the ghost of his dead wife. She tells him she knows all about the affair he's having. She knows all about the promises he broke. And this continues every night for a week or so. He's just tormented by this apparition. Then he decides that he's had enough and he goes to the local Zen master. He explains the situation to the teacher, who responds by saying, "That's a very clever ghost. She seems to know everything. She knows when you bought the engagement ring, what you did that day. She's got it all covered. Here's what you should do, though. When she comes to you tonight, grab a handful of beans and tell her, if you're so smart, tell me how many beans I'm holding. And if she can't answer you, she doesn't know anything more than you know. And therefore, it's just an extension of your subconscious mind, a trick. And if she does know, you gotta count the beans to make sure she's right. And then you got yourself a ghost. Come on back here and we'll take care of it from there." So the guy does what he says. Next time his wife comes, he challenges her with the beans, and she's unable to answer. She gets frustrated and throws a hissy fit and vanishes. And the guy goes about his life. What I enjoy about that story is how the Zen master doesn't make fun of the man when he tells him he's seeing ghosts. He just accepts the fact that that guy sees ghosts. And then he thinks of all the reasons that someone might see ghosts. They might be seeing a ghost. They could be insane. They might be on drugs. It could be just grief. And he took an educated guess and helped the guy out without making him feel like a fool. I think that's pretty neat. I wish more religions were like that. Okay, so if you're anything like me, you've had enough of this by now. There is one more episode about Zen coming up. I want to try to illustrate why Zen is the perfect lens for exploring the inner dialogue. Just because it can't explain why it's there or where it came from, that doesn't mean it doesn't have a bunch of useful information for us. So next time, I'm going to tell you this cool story my friend told me about how Helen Keller learned to think, and how that reminded me about when the Zen nun Choyono learned how not to think. So thanks for listening this far.
They've already hit the 10. They've already hit the 10.
I should really check in on those themes and make sure they fade out right next time. I was just so excited to have the need for theme songs that I got a little carried away with myself. So thanks for listening to this episode, and thanks for listening to all the other episodes. I didn't expect much from this project, and it's doing a lot better. So thanks, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and assume this isn't the only podcast you listen to, so I'm not going to bring up iTunes reviews and visiting the webpage and stuff. If you're interested, all that jazz is in the show notes. So last time we were here, I told you some stories about Zen that were supposed to illustrate what Zen does, which is, to put it in a nutshell, to try to mitigate or undo some of the effects of having a language in your head. How thought and reality are not the same thing, even though a lot of times that's exactly what they seem like. Zen attempts to separate thoughts and language. It's there to allow us to see thoughts for what they are, words in our head, not the real world, which, as we brought up before, tends to happen. But what if things were the opposite? What if the mind were a dark and empty place, and the path to enlightenment was in gaining the ability to use a language to fill the mind with sounds and symbols so that order can be brought to the inner and outer worlds? That's how it was for Helen Keller. My friend told me the story about the first time Helen Keller really understood the concept of letters and words. She had a teacher who had been trying to show her the alphabet by tracing the shape of the letters on the back of her hand and spelling out words. It would work like the teacher would give Helen an apple and then trace the letters to spell the word apple in the back of her hand. It wasn't really working that well. I don't know too much about it, but it sounds like a difficult concept to grasp, so no wonder it wasn't going well. But one day her teacher put Helen's hand under a stream of water and spelled the word water on the back of her hand. Helen Keller later described that moment by saying, "Water, that word startled my soul and awoke it, full of the spirit of the morning. Until that day, my mind had been like a darkened chamber, waiting for words to enter and light the lamp, which is thought. I learned a great many words that day." When I heard the story, I was reminded of the Zen nun Chiyono, who had a similar experience but the opposite problem. She had too many words in her head, and she was having difficulty making them go away. She was studying Zen under a Buko of Enganku, and in spite of the fact that she was intelligent and a good student and practiced often, she was having problems getting the hang of her meditations. But one day she did get it. It was actually a night. It was a clear moonlit night, and she was carrying a bucket filled with water, and the bucket was of dubious quality. The bottom was made of bamboo, and it had been falling apart for a while. It didn't have much left in it. She was looking at the moon's reflection in the water, and the bottom fell out of the bucket. The moon vanished, and the water spilled onto the ground, getting her feet wet. Probably got her feet wet. I wasn't there, but I'm just assuming that would be something that would happen. When she saw that, the moon disappear, and the water disappear, and the bottom of the bucket disappear, she had a moment much like Helen Keller did when her teacher spelled water on her hand while holding her hand underwater. But in reverse, when the water spilled out of the bucket, it took Chiyono's words with it. In commemoration of this victory over her mind, she wrote a poem. In this way and that, I tried to save the old pail, since the bamboo strip was weakening and about to break, until at last the bottom fell out. No more water in the pail. No more moon in the water. It's neat to me that Helen Keller gained a language and Chiyono saw through one. Both had a similar, profound shift in perspective and consciousness. Both experienced what would be called a moment of enlightenment, again, for totally opposite reasons. Maybe enlightenment is just being aware of negative space. I don't know. And I don't know what these two stories tell us about inner speech and our thought processes, but I thought it was pretty neat. And maybe it'll be neat to you. That's all for Zen for now. The next long episode is going to be about what the Western world has to say about the inner dialogue. It's kind of dry so far.
Nice to be in orbit. I'm already in the pad.
I've been pretty angry lately. I know why, but I don't really want to share why at the moment. It's got nothing to do with this. But I was at work the other day, and by work, I mean I was sitting in traffic, waiting for a light to turn green so I could bring somebody their food. It's not like I wanted to be a food delivery person. Nobody really lands in that on purpose. It's not something you aim for. It's usually a place you plop down after you miss at everything else you wanted to do. But that's where I am. So that's what I'm doing. And I'm checking the GPS because it's being funny. and I don't notice the light turning green. The guy behind me starts screaming at me. I'm used to this. Normally it goes okay. So I stuck my head out of the window. Originally intended to apologize, but as soon as he saw my head, he just started screaming at me some more. Then I started screaming back at him. And we were just two bald guys sticking their heads out of their car windows, screaming at each other. About 4 curse words in, we weren't even yelling about what we were yelling about. I know what I was yelling at. It wasn't him. I'm pretty sure he felt the same way. I also wanted to smash his face into the street over and over again. And I know he felt the same way. Eventually, we just drove away. After acting like children at an intersection. Just when you think you're getting somewhere, you lose your shit. I know I'm not the only one. As a result of my despicable... Because I got so mad at that guy and lost it, I spent the next 3 days just not really doing much other than really thinking about how I behaved that day. It wasn't fun, but after about 3 days, I'm pretty sure I worked it out. Growing up sucks. You gotta do it even when you're already an adult. It would be nice if output matched input in terms of emotions. Like, for example, if the guy behind me didn't start yelling at me because somebody yelled at him earlier and I wasn't preloaded and ready to go off on someone, if I could have resolved the source of my anger at the source of my anger, I wouldn't carry it around and squirt it out at intersections. All the feelings are that way. It gets creepy when you get into yourself.
Nice to be in orbit. I've already hit the 10.
I tried my best, but I still couldn't order that sandwich. I called, and the girl answered the phone. So far, so good. She asked me my name. I told her. Then she asked me again, and I told her. And then I spelled it. And then she put me on hold. When she came back from hold, she knew my name. I placed my order for a chicken sandwich. She asked me what I wanted on my pizza. Then I got put on hold. After I got off hold, I told her I wanted the chicken sandwich, a small one. And she says, large chicken sandwich. And I said, small. She said, large. And then I said, no thank you. I'm not hungry anymore. And I hung the phone up. I wasn't angry. I was sad. This is where I would normally think that she's an idiot. But I didn't think that this time. I just thought, maybe my cell phone has bad reception. Or maybe it's her first day. She doesn't automatically have to be an idiot because she couldn't do what I wanted. So I woke up, see my buddy, he's bartending, and I ask him if he wants to order some food. He says yeah. So we call the same place, but he calls this time. And I go to pick the food up, and it's the girl from the phone. And again, could have been a lot easier, but I didn't think she was an idiot. I did, then I chastised myself and said, she doesn't have to be an idiot just because she pissed you off. Then we ate and everything was fine. Later that day, I was talking to my mother. She asked about dinner, because that's what moms do. I told her about trying to order a sandwich, and she just said, I know what you're talking about. She's kind of an idiot. And I had to agree, and she was an idiot. I still don't know if she is. But at least I'm not just making assumptions right off the bat anymore. That's gotta be worth something.
Nice to be in orbit. I've already hit the pad.
It's Halloween. Walking around looking at all the kids in their crazy outfits. My nephew's running around too. My sister, my dad. It's pretty cool. It's not as fun as being a little kid, but you get to look at everybody. And I've just noticed that the real little kids, they get all dressed up like plants or animals. And then the little kids that are just walking, they're always easy things, like firemen or princesses. And once they get a little older, they start turning into monsters and superheroes and specific princesses and specific firemen. And then you get to be a big kid and you don't really try. Maybe it's just a mask. You're in it for the candy. Costumes are funny. It's interesting why we pick them. And it's also interesting that we just don't wear them on Halloween. We wear them all the time. What kind of monster are you? What kind do you dress as? Happy Halloween.
Nice to be in orbit. I've already hit the pad.
I was thinking about this app that I subscribe to. It cost $1.50 a month, which is about a pack of gum, or about the amount of change that falls out of my pocket and underneath my car seat every 2 weeks. For some reason, this was of great concern to me, and I thought about it the entire walk up to the sandwich shop, where I spent $7 on a sandwich that I could have done without. And then when I got my sandwich, I walked across the street and spent about $15 on vodka and clubs. And I could have got by with $5 worth of this, to be honest. Never occurred to me that I'm concentrating on the wrong area of my budget. But it did occur to me that my relationship with money isn't about my relationship with money. It's about anything but that. It's more about maneuvering my resources so I can avoid dealing with my own bullshit. That can't be the best way to get things done.
Nice to be in orbit. I'm already at the pad.
I thought I was going to get married about 15 years ago, and then I found out that I wasn't going to get married. Predictably, I was a little hurt, very upset. I was out with a friend who was letting me bend his ear a little bit. I got a few minutes into complaining, and he interrupted me. Because I had drifted from complaining about my personal situation to how all women are the same as my ex-fiance. It's common when you're upset to take out too broad of a brush. My friend interrupted me, and he said something that I've been thinking about ever since. He told me he had 5 sisters, and that they were completely different from each other. It's like I snapped out of a trance. I realized what I was doing. I haven't met every woman on the planet. There's over 4 billion of them. There's no way that I could form an opinion of an entire gender of a species based off of one relationship. Then I realized how much I thought like that. And I realized how common it is among other people. It's kind of dangerous to think that way, in my opinion. And I've been reminding myself, I haven't met them all. There's just too many of them. So I just try to let people be who they are. I should extend that courtesy to myself.
Nice to be in orbit.
snowing. I love taking walks in the snow. It's really quiet. Quieter than the rain. Clouds are like a psychic blanket or something. It's never as cold as it looks. There's no cars. It's like you have the whole world to yourself. Everybody slows down. Except when they're buying milk. I hope it keeps snowing. Historically, the things I do generally don't work out. But this podcast is working out pretty much okay. I just wanted to thank everybody for listening and downloading. And thanks.
Nice to be in orbit.
It was cold today. Like 2 jacket cold. It's too cold to go out and have a cigarette cold. And I just stayed inside most of the day and decided to go take a walk and get a sandwich. So I knew it was cold. So I put on a thermal shirt and a sweater and a sweat jacket and a coat and a hat. And I'm walking. I don't notice whether or not I'm cold or hot, so I figure everything's okay. I get to where I'm going. My friend's out front. He's not wearing a shirt. He's not shivering either. I snapped out of whatever I was doing inside myself, and I realized it wasn't cold anymore. I was the last to know.
Nice to be in orbit.
When I was in 6th grade, I went to the library and I checked out a book about meditation. I don't remember what it was called, but that's how I learned how to meditate. And in the book, the author was talking about how one time he saw this giant floating eyeball. And it sounded really cool. One of the reasons I started meditating initially was so that I could see weird stuff like that. About 20 years later, I'm still meditating, and I'm starting to see an eyeball. It looks like a ghost eyeball floating in inky blackness. It's happening for about a couple weeks. Reminds me of the story from the book, and I start to think about what it means. Is there something to this experience? Is what I'm asking myself. One day, I was looking at my tablet, and I noticed in the corner there was a reflection of an eyeball that matched almost exactly the thing I was seeing when I was meditating. So it wasn't some kind of mystical insight. It was just a reflection.
Nice to be in orbit. I've already hit the pad.
I used to be painfully and cripplingly shy. I always had a hard time talking to other little kids. And then when puberty hit and all my buddies were getting their game down, I found that when I was near a girl I liked, I broke out in a sweat and started farting. So I was in kind of a shell most of my life, just too afraid to talk to people, until one day it all dropped, just vanished in a second. I was a guitar teacher. It was one of my first students, and she was about 5. And her mom brought her into my room, and she sat down, and her mom left and closed the door. And I'm staring at a small child who's staring at me, and I don't know what to say to her. I haven't given many guitar lessons, and like I said, I'm still cripplingly shy, but only for another few minutes. The silence got a little uneasy. The kid was looking at me funny. And then it hit me. I thought back to when I was a little kid, and I was put in a room with a big person I didn't know. And none of them just sat there, being creepy and quiet. They were treating me like I was the little person, the one who had the right to be shy, and not them. I don't know what happened, but I just snapped out of it. I realized I'd been bullshitting myself, and I couldn't now, because this little kid was staring at me like I was a guitar teacher, and I better stare back at her like I'm a guitar teacher. So that's what I did. It worked out. Ever since that day, I wouldn't go give myself social butterfly status, but I just wasn't shy anymore, and I stopped farting and sweating around girls I liked. It's always a plus.
Nice to be in orbit. I've already hit the pad.
When I was in high school, I played a lot of classical guitar. When you play classical guitar, you use your fingernails instead of a pick. So you end up with one hand that has a bunch of weird long fingernails and one hand with no fingernails at all. I really liked it. I played 4 to 7 hours a day on average and kept a C+, B- grade average. So I could graduate and get out of high school so I could play more classical guitar. After high school, I didn't end up being a professional classical guitarist, but I still played, just not as much. And then eventually, I was playing hardly at all. But I couldn't bring myself to cut my fingernails. Even when it got to the point where I wasn't playing at all, I still kept the fingernails. Because in my head, I wasn't playing classical guitar. If I cut my fingernails, I couldn't play classical guitar. Eventually I got around to cutting them. And I gotta say, it was a lot heavier than I thought. I literally switched my identity from a classical guitar player to I don't know what. It's weird. It's just fingernails. Maybe fingernail length isn't that weird of an indicator of personal identity. I mean, is it that much different than identifying with your job or the high school you went to or your race or religion? I don't know. It's just weird what makes us think we are what we are.
Nice to be in orbit. I've already hit the pen.
I'm not going to go too much into it, but I have a problem with text editors. I really enjoy downloading them and using them. And I'm always looking for a certain one that has a holy grail set of features that I won't go into here, except for it needs to be able to communicate with everything. So it has to sync through Dropbox. It needs to work with Dropbox. That's one of the things I want. I couldn't find one that I liked that did that. Then I was reading about this app, and I downloaded it. I didn't like it, and I deleted it. Then I read some more about it, and I must have missed a point. So I downloaded it again, and I didn't get it. So I let it sit for a couple months, and then I went back to it. The thing is awesome. It does what I want. It's got the Dropbox thing, and all the other weird shit that I need. All I had to do was read the manual. How many other things am I not reading the manual for?
Nice to be in orbit.
you start reading about the inside of the human head, it won't be long before you come across the idea that the mind absorbs more information than it passes on to the ego. In a seemingly unrelated fact, I went through a big day drinking phase. I'm not ashamed of it, and I'm not proud of it. It's just something that happened. One day when I was at the bar, drinking too much before dinner, and I was staring at the television set, but not focusing on it. ESPN was on. I was worrying about paying bills or I don't know what I was doing, but I was worrying, and I wasn't paying attention. And the TV got all fuzzy because I wasn't focusing on it. I was just staring at it. And all of a sudden, after a few minutes, I was daydreaming about a bunch of wizards fighting a bunch of phoenixes, those firebirds. This kind of snapped me out of my trance. A lot of cars coming. So this kind of snaps me out of my trance, and I focus in on the television. And I see at the bottom, it's running a bunch of scores from a bunch of different basketball games. And the one up on the screen, as I snapped out, was the score for the Wizards versus the Phoenixes. So I guess that happens. I don't know what you're supposed to do when you experience firsthand your brain absorbing information weird without your permission. But I can tell you what I did. I stopped going to the bar in the daytime so much.
Nice to be in orbit. I've already hit the 10.
My sister sent me a hand-drawing picture of a gingerbread man with red and black eyes and yellow fangs. My nephew drew it in school, and when he brought it home, he told his mom that the kids made fun of him because he drew a different kind of gingerbread man than everybody else. This reminded me of when I was in the 3rd grade. And for art class, our teacher, Mrs. Derrick, passed out pictures of Santa Claus that we were to color. And she would walk up and down the aisles and comment on what we were doing as we were coloring. And when she got to me, she became furious. And she said, "What is wrong with you? How dare you? How dare you color Santa Claus's eyes brown?" And then she went on to say all kinds of non-flattering things about how I had the audacity to not color them blue. This was a Catholic school, not a Nazi school. And I've been out. It's been a while since I've been in 3rd grade, but I can still remember that. I wasn't looking for pity or attention by sharing that story. We all have moments like this. And I think if we think about those moments, we'll be forced to admit that they have way more influence over how we treat ourselves inside of our heads than they should. I don't know what you do about moments like that, but I color Santa Claus's eyes brown every time I can.
Nice to be in orbit. I've already hit the pan.
This morning I got to watch my nephew open his Christmas presents. I forgot how exciting it was when a pile of toys materializes in your room for no reason. It can't last forever though. He's about 7. He's got another year or two. You can't take Santa into double digits. It's just the way it is. I remember when I found out Santa wasn't real. I had asked for and gotten a really cool microscope, and I found a price tag on it. I was puzzled. I questioned my parents. I could tell they were lying, but I kept it to myself. I wasn't mad that Santa wasn't real. I was kind of blown away at everything my parents did for me. And since I was in on the secret now, I had to help keep it from my little sister. She couldn't find out the truth. She was too young to know. So I got to lie to her about Santa Claus. It's weird. You're not supposed to lie. And Santa Claus is supposed to turn you in for doing bad things. But you get to lie about him. I think we should lie to children about Santa Claus. I think we should keep magic and wonder in their lives as long as possible, even though it's impossible to keep it there forever. Maybe, if they're exposed to it enough, they'll remember it again when they're older.
Nice to be in orbit. I've already hit the pan.
3 years ago to the day, I was hundreds of miles away. I was falling in love. We were lucky. We ended up house sitting. We got to spend Christmas and New Year's together. And on New Year's Eve, we went out to the bar. We shouldn't have. We had enough to drink at home, but we went anyway. It was okay at first. Then I looked over and see her making out with somebody else. On the walk home, There were a few falls. The next morning, instead of leaving, I stayed because I was hungover, and because I believe in second chances, and because I was willfully ignoring red flags. A month after that day, I put everything in my car and I moved up there. 6 months after I moved up there, we moved in together. A year after moving in together, I took half the stuff I brought with me and my black eye, and I got in a rental car and I drove hundreds of miles away, back to where I started. And I'm here again today, New Year's Eve. 1 foot in the past, 1 foot in the now. I wonder how it happened, but I know how. I was lonely. Loneliness has its own logic. And it doesn't mind high interest rates. Tonight I'm going to go take a walk. And I'm going to resolve that. Instead of having 1 foot in the past, 1 in the present, I'm going to keep 1 in the present. Put 1 in the future. Not all the way in the future. Just a step or two.
Nice to be in orbit. I've already hit the tap.
The other day I was out for my walk. I was listening to Planet Money. They were talking about Amazon and the divorce the guy's going through and how much money he makes. And I thought it might be neat if I had my own company. I could hire people, pay them enough money to have decent lives, and run it, and whatever that entails. I was just thinking harmless, nonsense thoughts. And about 4 sentences into it, another thought jumps into my head, telling me what a fool I am for even considering such a thing. I don't know what I did to myself to start treating myself that way. But I gotta find out. What made this incident so strange was that it was as though I was attacked by my own mind for the simple crime of imagining what it would be like if my life was better. That's no good. So I was thinking about what I'd said to myself the other day when I was thinking about being financially stable and then chastising myself for it. When I thought, I would like to own a business, my mind replied with, that's not what you... And that's where I get hung up. Why was I thinking in I, but yelling at myself with you? Using the word you implies you're talking about not yourself. I began to pay attention and found that these vocabulary choices were kind of rampant. For example, I'm hungry. Instead of thinking, well, what do I want to eat? I thought, what should you get? It was like I was talking to two people inside my head. Way more often than necessary. I don't know where this came from, and it's obvious I'm not the only person that does this. I have a theory. I think it goes back to how we talk to babies. When we talk to babies, we say things like, look at you, who's a little potato. You're a little potato. Yes, I am. Yes, I am. So right before we know what it means, the definitions of you and I become confused. There's got to be a way to straighten that out. And I wonder if this is where the royal we came from. If there's an I and a you in your head, and the best you can do is make a we out of them, that implies, I think that implies, that the voices that disagree with you have to do what you tell them to do. Because we're all doing this. We're becoming financially dependent, even though it's just one me. Getting used to that's gotta be weird.
Nice to be in orbit. I've already hit the tap.
So the other day I was going about my business and I felt angry. I didn't become angry. I caught it before I got angry. And I was looking at it like I was holding it in my hand, smelling it, poking it, and underneath the anger, it's just mostly hurt feelings, bruised ego. I felt slighted, insulted, belittled. And underneath that, lifted up with a stick, looked at underneath. And underneath the bruised ego, there was an emotionless understanding of the situation. Just calmly waiting for me to stop throwing a hissy fit so I can accept it. And I accepted it. My anger, my right to have it, and the fact that I don't need to act on it. And also that it was hiding something. I was hiding a sadness. A sadness if you poke your anger, it's just sadness.
Nice to be in orbit. Nice to be in orbit.
Tried my best to buy some gas today. I started out by taking my car to the gas station, parking in front of the pump. I went inside, got a coffee, made my way to the cashier, showed him the coffee, handed him $10, and said, "Put the change on 11." He said, "No problem, sir. Have a good day." And I said, "Same to you." Made my way to the gas pump, and there was no gas to pump. It just wasn't there. Didn't work. I'm neither angry nor thrilled at the situation. I just want my gas in as peaceful and efficient manner as possible. So I go back into the store, and I just let the cashier know. I say, "Hey man, there's just no gas there." And he starts to tremble. He panics a little bit, and he puts that little sign in front so that nobody else can come by, and he gets a little upset. Starts pushing at the screen. He can't figure it out. So I just go, "Hey buddy, I fuck up all the time. All the time. Don't sweat this." And he laughed. And his boss came over. And I got my gas. And I went about my day. And I thought, that's what I can do when I pay attention. I can just end panic. Send it away from a situation it never should have been invited to. Everybody could do that.
I've already hit the 10. I've already hit the 10.
On Tuesday nights, my favorite bar has trivia night. There's nothing really special about it. It's just trivia night. Sometimes they're more fun than others, but it's always better than not going to trivia night, which is something that surprised me, enjoying it as much as I did. I mean, like I said, it's nothing special. Like, believe me, it's nothing special. But it's a Tuesday night, and it's a goofy little game. And it's the same gang of regulars. Now, if you're in a bar on a Tuesday night consistently, Something somewhere isn't working like you thought it should be, or it needs to be. I'm not saying there's legitimate reasons. I'm not saying there's illegitimate ones. I am saying, if you're in a bar every Tuesday, you're in a weird place. And after a couple of months of this trivia night, everybody, I wouldn't say we're friends, but we're definitely a league of small teams, and we interact with each other like a league of small teams. We joke, we laugh a little bit more than on other nights. There's something to do. Less people cause problems. It's something. It's just something. And that's all. I felt silly about enjoying this. But after a while, I just decided it's something. So why not just let it be something? A few weeks later, my grandmother was telling me about the bingo games they've been holding in her little community center, and then how she's been going, and she's been feeling silly for enjoying herself. Saying things like, she said something along the lines of, I can't believe all I have is a bingo game. And I can't believe how much fun it is. I gave her the short version of the trivia night thing. I don't know if it did any good. I don't know if she'll enjoy bingo or get over it. But I do know there's nothing wrong with just having bingo or just having a trivia night. You could just have nothing.
Nice to be in orbit. Everybody at the 10.
Back when I was in high school, I had a friend. I have some friends now, too. It's not like that. But this particular friend, one day, he had asked me, how do you learn how to meditate? I guess I was in 10th or 11th grade, which would put me about 3 to 4 years into practicing meditation. And I told him what I learned is that you inhale, you count to 4, and you hold your breath, and you count to 4, and you exhale, and you count to 4. And you do that any time of the day you want. You could lay down, you could sit up, you could do whatever. Just do that, and eventually your body you'll figure it out. You won't be meditating that way. You'll stumble upon your own way, and that's how it's supposed to be, as far as I know. So that's what I told him. And a few weeks later, he came back and he said, you're full of bullshit. The way you told me to meditate didn't work at all. And after a few days, I figured out my own way how to do it. You don't know what you're talking about. I don't even know why I asked you to teach me how to meditate. And just like that, my career as a meditation teacher was over. Sometimes I still get asked that question. Now I just tell them, get a giant pile of Legos, sort them by color, pay attention to how you feel, and find something that makes you feel that way. And just like that, you're pretty much meditating.
Nice to be in orbit.
Teeth can explode. Nobody knows why they do it. They can. 32 tiny time bombs in your face.
I've already hit the 10.
It was a Friday night. It was a while ago. I was with my friend about 1:30 in the morning. Last call had come and gone, and he was staring at a shot of whiskey that at this point was just going to make him miserable in the morning. Nothing he'd notice right away. He was staring at his whiskey, and he said to me, "I have to be at work at 5:30. I don't know if I should drink this." I didn't know what to say, so I said, "You might as well just drink it. 5:30's, you just gotta get up and brush your teeth and go to work." To which he replied, "I am brushing my teeth. With a little mouthwash and change my shirt. And that's it." I didn't witness this, what I'm about to tell you firsthand, but I do trust the source it came from. Seems that one day, late in the afternoon, my nephew was doing whatever 7-year-olds do during the summer. It's nearing dinner time. He was told to put his shoes on, get ready to go. Asked the usual volley of questions. Do you need to use the bathroom? Do you have everything you need? Where are your pants? Did you brush your teeth? He'd said, "No, I didn't brush my teeth." And when my sister pressed him for an answer, he said that nobody was going to be seeing him today because he was staying inside and playing, so he didn't see any reason to brush his teeth. I was 10, maybe 11, if I'm remembering this right, sitting in a dentist's chair, doing a routine checkup, a supposedly routine checkup, at the end of which I was informed I would need braces. At that age, I felt uncomfortable spending that much of my parents' money on teeth I was pretty sure, based on family history, would be falling out of my head before I hit 50. So I asked her what would happen if I didn't get braces. And she said nothing. And I asked them how much would they cost. It was about $5,000 or $6,000. I then asked her why I was expected to spend $5,000 of my parents' money on something that wouldn't matter. Then I got to go. But something happened to me that day. Something happened to my relationship between me and my teeth. as I'm sure you know, are bones. Bones that live inside of your mouth and burst forth. Think about it. Bones are inside pieces. Teeth are bones outside. Something inherently creepy, unsettling.
Nice to be in orbit.